Today's episode is for the quiet grief of realizing that a relationship didn't end, but it isn't the same either. We're learning how to honor what was while making room for what is. We're talking about how to stay tender instead of bitter, present instead of distant, and faithful through the in-between seasons. Welcome back to the table.
Hey, welcome back to Elizabeth Project. This week, it is snowy.
Woo! So snowy.
Our men are gone on a prayer retreat. I'm in West Virginia. Lindsay, I think you're at your mom's, right?
I am. I'm at my parents' house.
And so we're doing the best we can.
We are surviving.
She did the best she could.
We talked about this last week.
So anyway, I loved last week's podcast, and I actually got, within just the first day of posting, so much response in that, because I feel like that is where friendships either thrive or die. And a lot of people just are really experiencing that. So we thought we would dive more, I guess, deeper into what all that really looks like through different stages. And this week, really, I don't know, grieving the relationships maybe that end whenever you enter a new season.
And I think that's a great thought, because when we think of grief, we think about death. And it's not always that, but grief can be through transition. It can be through a passing or an ending of a situation. And so I think a lot of times the new seasons do bring levels of grief, and that's what causes panic, right? Because we don't know how to handle it. We don't know how to walk through that grief when the changes transition. So I think it's good to kind of talk about some of those and figure out where you're at, where I'm at, and how we can mesh that together.
I saw a quote and I wrote it down because I loved it so much. And it said, "Some of the hardest grief we carry isn't over people we lost. It's over versions of relationships that no longer exist." Because there's no denying that when a friend goes through a different season, that relationships change. We hit on motherhood and talked about, all of a sudden priorities now change, time changes, everything changes. I really probably couldn't even mention one thing that doesn't change when someone enters the realm of motherhood.
Exactly. I think it's same person, same love, but different seasons. So today in this episode, that's what I think we really need to talk about, of what it looks like to grieve what was and learn how to build something new with the same person that you already have a relationship with. And I think we have to accept where we're at in order to move forward and acknowledge that, right? Acknowledge so you can accept it and move forward. So, I feel like there's guilt on all sides, don't you?
Right. So you probably have the moms who now have so many more responsibilities that they're starting to feel absent, from the friendships that they were having. You have the friend who maybe now is feeling forgotten because the mom is so busy, or in any circumstance from motherhood, singleness, the friend maybe that's starting to feel left behind. But I will say this, I don't think that it's only from the one that life isn't changing. I will say from, personal experience, when I became a mom, because I did have so many other responsibilities and my focus and priorities were changing, my friends who didn't have those responsibilities yet and were able to still go and their life was still evolving, I'm not saying that I didn't, kind of feel left behind. At some point, you almost feel like your life starts to become not stagnant, but it is in a different place of maybe slowing down and honing in on one thing. And while your friends are still living life and things are still going, you do kind of feel left behind in that. And so now you've got to figure out how to vocalize your want to maybe still be included, even though you have so much going on,
And I think that's the key, honestly, because we feel like it's so one-sided and we don't think about the other person's feelings. And so it's like we're the ones just grieving this and we're not considering what the other person is thinking also. And it's both sides of the street, right? We both feel that way. But if we don't communicate it, then the other person doesn't know. And then this just turns into this rapid cycle where friendships are struggling. But Shannon, I don't feel like most friendships, I don't think they end in conflict.
Right.
I think it's that they fade through misunderstanding, miscommunication, not figuring out where that missing piece is.
Yeah, I totally agree. And we've said this before, in order for relationships to truly grow, they have to survive these transitions, and figuring out how to survive these transitions and going through what we're just talking about was really just realizing the grief in it.
So I think that's what we talked about for today, that friendship doesn't always look the same.
Yeah.
And that's not failure.
Less time, it doesn't mean less love, or that a friendship
Yes.
is no longer,
Right. So let's talk about some of those
Okay.
seasons. I mean, we've kind of gone through a couple of them. Y'all have heard us drop them out, but let's talk about it. Things are hard. Things are sticky. We don't want to talk about them. Conversations get awkward. So let's do it here in a safe space where we can work it out, right? So Shane, which one do we want to start with?
Well, we've had a lot on motherhood. Let's maybe go with singleness.
Okay, so can I start here?
Yeah.
All right, y'all, I have been so burdened
Yes.
over the last couple months with singleness and my friends that are there. Ladies, those of you living in singleness right now, I cannot say that at this current moment in my life that I understand where you're at, but I can reach out to you. I can figure out where you're struggling and what it feels like and how to help and try to be a better friend there. So that's where my heart has been, and I want to talk about it today. So kind of what I've gathered. I've talked to many women, many girls, and I feel like the struggle amongst singleness is the need for inclusion.
Yeah.
Just truly being included. So those of you not in this season, listen up. There needs to be meaningful conversation. And y'all, they want the avoidance. It's not a pity season. They are struggling, but they don't want you to baby them or dote over them like they're not. They're adults, y'all. Like, they are grown adults too, right? And I'm feeling, Shane, this like heated in me when I'm talking to other single friends of mine and adult women that are in this season that are being treated differently because they're not in a similar season.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, ladies, I'm so sorry. I had to just take a breather because I'm getting a little.
She said, "I don't want to be ugly."
I don't want to be ugly.
Okay.
I panicked. Y'all, I think I just, with situations and topics, especially coming through the holidays, I think sometimes when we see a friend that's in singleness or someone in your church that's in singleness, we often reach out to them and give a task or sign them up to volunteer or help with our kids because we're in chaos, like they're an extra hand. And y'all, I don't think a lot of them mind it, but it's how we present it. How would you want to be treated? It's not just a leftover for them or another space for them to be put to work, but like, how can we help them grow in this season and pray for them and build them up and include them in what we're doing without them feeling like we just need the extra hand, so we're going to give them a task.
Right.
And I don't know, Shane, if any of that makes sense. It's just true inclusion like you would want to be included and letting them feel love because they might not have a partner right now that can show them that attention, affection, and love. So how can we step in as friends or as coworkers or others in the church, just ladies loving on ladies? And I think that's one thing where we need to figure out, like we've said, how to fill the gap and not just give it an assignment.
And I think it goes on both ends, as far as wanting to be included. For instance, if you do want a single to come along and to do something with you, to understand, like you just said, they're not just there as an extra hand, but also
right.
as a single, realizing that if you do want a mom to come along, offering, like if it's in your heart to offer,
right,
offering like, hey, I still want you to be able to come and I'll help you the best I can. I think
right.
that goes a long way too. And it's just giving, we've said this 1,000 times, it is giving grace on
yes.
both sides.
Both sides.
Yeah.
And I think that's it, Shane, is that, again, the missing component of communicating. So to be honest, I, in the last couple months, have reached out to a few single ladies and said, where can I do better? Because I feel like I've kind of left you hanging. I don't always want to be like, are you struggling? Right? But then I know the nights... Right. But then I know those nights are lonely and I know there are times where they need somebody. And so you do have to have communication of how can I better be a friend to you in this season when mine looks different. But also, like, you may not always want to talk about me in the season of potty training, and maybe you do want to hear it. It's that communication of figuring out what each other needs. So in needing grace, Shane, I think that turns into a conversation of motherhood. What does it look like? The flexibility, the being checked on. What do you think?
Yeah, I think apart from someone getting married, like leaving that singleness, there still is a little bit of freedom when it comes to even just getting married, staying friends through single and married, although they have, one more responsibility. In my transitions, me personally, I would say that motherhood so far has been the hardest one to grieve relationships and keep. And with that, I think a lot of it could be combated, and I have been faulty on my end and had a lot of failure, and it is just on both sides to keep inviting. Don't assume that because someone doesn't have kids that they don't want invited into your chaos, and then don't assume that just because they have chaos that they wouldn't want to be invited to still do and be a part, which is hard because I know I have failed, like I just said, just assuming of, oh, well, they have a baby, there's no way they're going to want to do that.
Right.
When really just even if it's just the mental battle that person may go through of that loneliness of, well, I guess I'm no longer included, or I guess I'm no longer a part because I now have a kid, it shuts that down, and it kind of puts the ball in their court to say, hey, you're still always welcome here, but I understand that you have a lot going, so there is no pressure to come and join, but you're always, you know,
right.
Yeah.
And I think that covers, Shane, you're truly still letting them make that choice to be included, but you're not just doing it. Y'all, if you're ever inviting somebody knowing they're not going to come just to be, you know, let's not be like that. But I think about, Shane, in this topic, remember we had girls' lunch back in the fall and had a friend that just had a baby, and she so badly wanted to go, and we didn't even realize, and had we not have invited her, and y'all moved heaven and earth to get to that girl lunch, and we had the best time, you know, but like, leave that up to them. But had we not have invited her, because it was like, oh, we know she can't, but then that just makes her feel left out.
It does.
And there's no point. And I think that is just putting expectations on people when we need to let them make their decisions and us just be there and open the door.
I love a quote also that's in, y'all say, I like quotes. If you don't know, I like quotes. And it was talking about how just because we're in a different season doesn't mean we can't sit at the same table.
Oh.
Yeah, and so that was very convicting, because how many times you'll be fixing to go do something and you'll be in your mind thinking about who maybe wants to tag along, and you automatically shut off different seasons of life, just assuming that, you know, they may not want to be a part. And I don't ever think that's the case. I think every girly, it doesn't matter what stage of life you're in, everybody likes to feel a part and to even do things maybe that may not even really be their interest. I think women in general right now are lonely.
Right. And I think we just all, you're right, we want to be a part.
Yeah.
I think you could tell me that we were going to go shovel snow together, I'd say I'm in.
Yes. Yes. And the biggest, this is totally kind of off topic, and I don't know why, but I just think it's not letting one person continually be the inviter. You know, in the seasons, you know, have you ever felt like that? Why am I always the one that's having to invite, that's having to plan, that's having to get together? It almost makes me feel like you don't want to hang out with me,
right?
Unless it's something.
I think we all feel that way.
We do, and that I'm orchestrating. And I saw a reel the other day, but then it was like, then I got convicted because I was like, well, maybe, you know, God made you the inviter. And so it's always navigating those hard things of, you're not forcing people out of who they are, and maybe God designed people. I don't know. I'm learning through this like I'm speaking through this. And so.
Yeah. But I think you're right. I think it is that. I think God makes us that way. But sometimes when you do see the ones that are barely head above water that used to be the inviter, then invite them.
Yeah, invite
It's a lot of really wordy words. But, you know, like sometimes seasons change. So just because that's how they once were, you may have to step up and take that role in different seasons of life.
Maybe that's the relationship that died, and so now it's a new form. So you never know.
You're grieving that. The other one I was thinking about really, Shane, was for our ladies that are in the empty nest season, and that can look like so many different things. You know, kids just going to college, or kids that got married, people that their children moved off. Empty nest can be so many different things. It just really changes as an older woman. And I think what I've seen and what's really been on my heart for that season of life is the need for your purpose. Like, we need you the most, because that is biblical, that we are to learn from you. The younger are to learn from the older. So ladies, I'm not saying that this is younger to older. Clearly we are in our 30s living this life right now. However, the connection that I have of the women that are older than me, especially those empty nesters that are so, you know, remembering those good years of life, the connection is so beautiful, and there's so much to learn there. And I think I just want them and you ladies listening to know how needed you are.
So needed.
I mean, think about if we could really show them their purpose and how we need them. So ladies, I'm showing you your purpose, how I need you. Right? But I need you. Like, I need you to show me, like, hey, we struggled in the beginning of our marriage and when finances weren't there and we struggled and this is how we made it through. Or we had that baby that wouldn't sleep. You know, the advice, like Shane, how we were told not to talk in the nighttime, best advice I've ever gotten, right? I mean, I need to know when my baby's not sleeping and we're at each other's throats, like, what do I do? Or, you know, how to raise a kid. And I mean, he's a real human. Like, what am I doing? Help me, teach me. What did you do that worked? What did you do that didn't work?
Yeah.
Tell me. I need all the things. But then in that season where you're feeling alone and they're not coming back and they're not calling like they did and all the things, well, maybe that's time for one of the friendships, you know, kind of grieve that section. I'm not saying do away with the family, but then pick up a friend.
Yeah.
Phone a friend. Dial them in.
We're just going to go ahead and let you know the snow has us a little bit crazy. And this episode is, I can already tell, all over the place.
But it's so good.
So I have some.
But it's good.
So here's some questions. I was going to ask Lindsay. It was, what version of a relationship have you quietly grieved but never named as grief?
Okay, so Shane just asked me this transparently. This is the first thing that came to my mind, and it's one of those we said we've never named it, and I've never named it, but we were here, so let's talk about it. I think my motherhood journey, starting with Denver, with infertility, there was not a lot of connection for me of people that had lost multiple babies. And so that was a season. But then people did kind of come out of the woodworks, and people that I didn't know had struggled with that did. And so I found that. However, then I entered into becoming a medical mama. And that was a season of motherhood that I did grieve quietly because I had entered into new motherhood, but I didn't feel like our story looked like all the other moms and all the other new babies. And Denver was struggling and we were having all the health things. And honestly, I was a new mom, but I didn't feel like I was the same. And the Lord really brought about a little community. I have a Bible study group, shout out to my ladies of medical mamas, but like God sent them to me, but I didn't have that. And I think that was a season that was quietly grieved and I didn't realize it, but I was in uncharted waters for this season of life that, yes, I was entering motherhood, but it wasn't the norm and it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. And it didn't look like what I wanted it to.
Yeah.
And so that was definitely one of those.
Do you feel like any friendships changed?
For sure. So like we've talked about with supporting and conversating, like our relationship and some of our close friends in our friend group, I feel like those got stronger. Those changed for the better because y'all stepped up and figured out how to accommodate me, how to love my child, how to help us through all those situations and be there for us. But then, I feel like I lost some relationships because they didn't understand the busy and the lack of effort sometimes for me because I'm pouring into him. And so things change. And I mean, sometimes just being honest with you, maybe relationships that change because I feel like judgment because they don't understand Denver, they don't understand his needs, or they want to underestimate them like they're not a thing, if that makes sense.
I think,
and so that's hard.
Right. And I think a lot of it, well, I just want to skip the next one because this just came to mind, but I think a lot of that and friendships, when someone is going through something along that is, even more than a season change than what someone may have thought, or even just a normal season change, it really takes being like Christ. And usually it is the relationships that are founded in Christ that make it and that do last because you're able, to love like he does and have the patience like he has.
Right.
And I was going to ask you even the question along those lines, talking about how do you think we can love like Christ through those seasons?
I mean, Shane, all that comes to mind is 1 John 4:16. So let me read this to you.
Okay.
No, I'm wrong. 1 John 4:12. That's it. And it says, if we love one another, God dwelleth in us, and his love is perfected in us. So clearly I can't love perfectly because I'm not perfect.
Right.
But if we love each other, ladies, if we love each other, then God will be with us. And because of his perfect love, he gives it to us to where we can give it to each other. And that's the only way I know how, because I know my love is wrecked if it's just based on me, right? You wouldn't get anything from
Right.
me if it wasn't for Christ. So I think that's how we have to love like Christ, is to fill ourselves with the scripture and fill ourselves with prayer and just do the best we can, knowing that if we're giving our all, he will bless it if we're really, truly trying to love one another.
Yeah, and I mean, Jesus doesn't even okay, for instance, he doesn't love people for who they were yesterday. It is finding people in their today, in the new season that's changing, and he calls them forward. And so he loves them going forward.
He literally wants to dwell with us and wants to perfect things for us.
Right. And sometimes I wrote down that sometimes love looks like listening more than speaking, praying more than fixing, and trusting God, more than our comfort levels would want to allow us to experience in new seasons,
Yeah. So, I mean, how do you discern, Shane, whether God is calling us to rebuild, whether he's calling us to redefine, or if he's calling you to release?
I think at least for me, and it's different with everybody, but discernment kind of shows up in either, waves of peace or the absence of it, kind of giving you those inklings on whether to really lean in to rebuild, or kind of that freedom you feel that if you were to release. But God never really rushes us in those decisions. In a relationship, if it's just continual resentment, and if it's just continual clashing, even after having communication or even after trying to work things through the right way, that sometimes that is maybe just a step back to say that was for that season.
Right. If you've done all God commands us to do, to be right with one another, then yeah, it might be time.
It might be time. And discernment and all of that is just, it's really not even about even what hurts, I guess, less, because it's not saying that you don't ever have to put that effort in. There may be something that is clashing. There may be a time where a relationship really comes to heads and seasons are changing so quickly, and it does require that awkward, tough communication, and then probably just seeing where it goes from there.
Hard things to think about. Yeah. So singleness, motherhood, empty nesters, and then where you need to move these relationships and how to grieve them to move forward.
Yep. Well, this was all over the place, but fun.
So it was so fun. Please enjoy our thoughts and know that we love
you. Hey, thanks for spending time with us here on the Elizabeth Project. Every listen, every share, and every message means the world. My hope is that these conversations remind you that you're seen, and you're called, and you have a purpose right where you are. Until next time, keep showing up, keep growing, and remember,